When you have to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for a Trap House podcast here. Today, we're going to have a little update from Guy Groenewold from Groenewold Fur and Wool Company. So the updates about the fur market, what he's seeing or what he's predicting or expectations of what that might be. So keep all this in mind when you go to sell your fur this season. So Charlie, of course, is with us. He'll be joining me here real soon, and we're going to talk to Guy. But first, we got to say thanks to the sponsors, Top Lot Stretcher Company. Check out their website. That's toplotstretcherco.com. They make the adjustable stretcher that we always talk about and support. But they have a whole line of trapping supplies. So you can go through their website, check their store out. Stuff for skinning and fleshing. They have some really nice push pins that they sell. You just surf their website, check it out. And also Hags Bracket. Jeff Haggerty supports us, and we support him, maker of the Hags Bracket there. His website is j3o.com. Check out their line of stuff. They got numerous great products, all American made, good stuff. Thank you, Jeff, for the support. Also, we have Weeby Knives, their website, weebyknives.com. Several knives to choose from, some with replaceable blades, fixed blades. They got this new setup for deer hunters. It's got bone saw in there with a gut hook and a couple other knives with it. And very reasonably priced, quality knives too. Can't say enough good about them, and I'm glad we have them on board. Also, got to say, last but not least, thanks to Hoosier Trapper Supply, supporting this podcast and getting this thing off the ground. Our website is HoosierTrapperSupply.com. It's the maker of Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. We got trapping kits, everything you need in the trapping field, as well as deer scent. We do some taxidermy too. So if you're local or want to try us out, you can look us up, give us a call. But yeah, let's go get this update from Guy and see what the whole fur talk is all about. So thanks. All right, we are here with Guy Groenewold. Now, trapping season is underway. A lot of people are out and about, and a lot of questions surrounding fur prices. So he's going to kind of fill us in on kind of what's going on out there, or what things we can kind of predict or possibly foresee or expect. So, Guy, what can you tell us? Thanks for joining us, by the way.
Oh, yeah, no problem. And certainly thanks for having me. I always enjoy to talk to you guys. Okay, so I'll give a little general overview, and then I'll do a quick rundown of each, individual items, because there is, certainly you can't just lump them all together. And the rundown makes it a little bit easier because 90% or more of our fur is going to China today. And here is what has changed since last year with regards to China. And this is why there's a problem in the market. Okay. So the fur market works like this in China. They start to make samples, the manufacturers do, of garments in, March, basically March, April, May. And they come into our stores over there. We have 2 of them. And they buy skins, 10, 20, 50, 100. And they make these samples that the retailers can take a look at and start to place orders. And then the retailers place the orders maybe June, July, August, September, and October. And as they get these orders for quantities, they start to buy, bigger parcels of skins from us. Instead of 10, 20, 50, 100, they buy 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, whatever. Well, this summer, it seemed a little funny that, we really had a good season in the spring, for samples. I mean, we have just, it was a very good spring, and we were very optimistic, and we were charging more money, for the skins last year. This is mostly raccoon, but, somewhat beavers, somewhat, any skin that they use in China, red foxes, gray foxes. And when it came time to do the reorders, it seemed like there was a little bit, of hesitancy. So in other words, the retailers did not start converting on, buying these garments and making the bigger orders. Well, there really COVID was not a problem this summer, but the Chinese property market, which has been going up for 30 years since I've been going to China, and it goes up, sometimes it would double in 3 years. They saw their first signs of a declining property market. So everybody that had been making, $50,000 a year in China, people that own property, all of a sudden they were losing $50,000 on an apartment or $100,000. And so what's called the wealth effect, where, they feel like even though they don't sell their house, they feel like they're worth more money, and they go out and buy a fur coat, which helped us last year because property market was just crazy last year in China. We already saw a foretaste of what was happening in their economy, and we should have known a little something then, and we did. We were hesitant this summer. Well, then what has transpired since then is, last year, what really helped us was China's economy was on fire because everybody was shut down around the world as far as manufacturing. And China had, eradicated the virus over there, and their economy was open full bore, making stuff for the rest of the world. And their economy was quite good, and everybody had money, apartments were going up, and they were buying a lot of fur. This year, with the new Delta variant, it's become very difficult for them to keep it out of their country, and especially in the northern provinces where most of the furs are sold. So China is, in many of the areas where all the furs are sold, they're shut down. I mean, Harbin is the most important city, and that's open again now, but for the past month and a half, it's been shut down. And even outside of Beijing, where one of our stores is, that province is shut down. So even if we could have a manufacturer that wanted to buy something, we can't sell it. So the situation in China is, in fact, extremely dire. And I talked to yesterday one of my customers. He's the biggest mink guy in the world. This is ranch mink. He also does wild fur, but he's the biggest in the world. And he said, he's been in it his entire life, and he has never seen it where, because this is the time where, money from the retail sector, the big orders start to get paid for, and the money starts to come back into the fur business. In other words, the dealers over there, the manufacturers start to get money, and they start to, buy skins kind of for the new year and start to replenish and kind of feel, they're able to count their money once a year. This is the time. Well, that money is not coming back. Some people are off 90% on their sales. So a place that would sell, 100 coats in a week, they're selling 10. So, and some of them are selling none, where it's completely shut down. So what we're hoping for, and the reason that we have put off our routes, is that, they have about 2 months left before the Chinese New Year. We're hoping that, that maybe Harbin is reopened, and that maybe some of these other places get reopened, and, there's a later season push to clear some of these coats at retail. And I was talking about that mink guy. He said he has never in his entire professional career seen anything like this. I mean, there's just so many people in China that somehow the garments get cleared every year, and they're not getting cleared this year. So not saying it's not going to happen in the next 2 months. We have, all of November, or half of November, I guess, left. And we have all of December and, a little bit in January yet before they kind of shut down for the new year. But, I mean, it's got to happen, and it's got to happen fast. Or, we're going to have these ranch mink going down to, heart of the pandemic levels, which means, you just can't sell any wild fur. And I know that's a bit of a bleak scenario. But that is the situation. If retail doesn't improve, on the Chinese items, raccoon, muskrats, red fox, gray fox, that's the scenario that we're looking for. So, any questions on that? I know I go pretty fast.
So Guy, it's basically the Delta variant is the biggest factor as far as things being shut down.
It certainly is.
But in the back of their mind, they also have this issue of declining property values too.
Yes, and that but they do both affect it, because we felt it in the summer already, and in late fall before this Delta variant had shut them back down again. And they get 2 cases. They have less cases that in the entire country than we have probably in my county in Illinois. But
right.
they shut down, for 2 cases, they shut down, 20 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the situation.
Are they actively vaccinating people over there, or is that
they have a higher vaccination rate than we do, but their vaccination is very ineffective. It's ours is 94% efficacy, and theirs is 30%. So the country is very scared to let this, disease play out a little bit like it has, in America. Last year we were certainly at a huge disadvantage to them, economically, because, they just got rid of the virus. Well, now it's the exact opposite, because, the virus has kind of run through us, and a lot of vaccinations, and, our economy is basically open, but, they have to shut down millions of people to try to keep it out. And with the Delta variant being so transmissible, it's darn near impossible.
right? So yeah, certainly the best case scenario then, just to kind of recap what you said, is for them to get that somewhat under control, reopen, and hope for the best. Is the weather cold over there?
The weather is cold, and that's the very depressing thing about it. They've had some parts of China the coldest weather since 1955.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what's just really, the 1 year that you get that's really cold, that things would have been, kind of crazy, and they shut the thing down.
Maybe we can hope for a little bit of hindsight buying there then, maybe. So
yeah, we might, I'm not saying they, I guess if I had to guess, and what we sort of are going with is that it won't remain at 10%, but it won't go to 100%.
Okay.
Chances are we're going to get some, relatively mediocre, selling season where, they'll catch up somewhat, but they won't, catch up, to a normal year. Right. So it won't be the most dire of predictions. If they stay shut down, it probably will be, but, they'll get, some of these areas reopen, and, they'll have a pre-Chinese New Year, a sort of a typical shopping season, which will catch them up a bit, and, we'll end up with kind of a normal year, next year.
Yeah. So you see this as relatively temporary for this season? We just got to get through this hurdle, or pull out your crystal ball, I guess. But it's like, obviously it's hard to predict.
Yeah, is it the end of the fur business? The China has a very vibrant, fur business, and they bought a lot of skins this year to supply that. I do think it's, relatively temporary, but it's not something that I'm gonna, I think there is a real chance that they kind of lose a retail season here. Okay. And if they do, it's going to really put pressure on these ranch mink, and that is not a good thing. Muskrats have already, certainly fallen, because, the ranch mink are falling there every day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And there are a fair amount of ranch mink out there, correct? Available.
There's more than you think. I know we lost all those mink in Copenhagen or Denmark last year, but we just heard numbers today, and Copenhagen still has, and they have ceased taking mink. Okay, they ceased taking mink a few 20 unsold mink. So they're going to remain in business as an auction company for another 2 years. This is their plan, unless they don't sell them. But they're going to remain in business for another 2 years and have 8 more sales with ranch mink, even though they're not taking any in, because they have 20 million skins. Okay. And Helsinki will have a record this year of 14 million.
Yeah.
So there's, I guess if they sell 10 and 10, 10 this year and 10 next year, that still leaves 24 million. That was significantly, more mink than what was sold by auction this year.
Right. Right. But they're, I guess on the upside to that, they're not going to be replaced then, correct?
Well, Copenhagen's aren't. And, after what these, people see, these ranchers see, this February for prices, there's probably going to be, some of the people that remain in business are, you might see some belt outs there as well.
Okay.
But, the Danish ones are not gonna, they're like I said, they're not taking any more mink. And, but Helsinki, is still in there. Like I said, they have a record amount for that auction company.
Does China still produce mink as well? Range mink?
Yeah, they do. It's really hard to get a handle on what they produce. They were, at one time, I think close to, 100 million skins. And it's difficult to know, but they still, they still produce, a significant quantity and, somewhere, 10 to 20 million, something like that.
Okay. So, but I understand that it's not quite the quality that was produced elsewhere.
Well, I'll tell you, when you go to China, there's two types of ranch mink. There's those that are sized and there are those that are not. And if a mink gets sized, it's no longer a Chinese mink. Once they size it, in other words, if it's good enough quality that they don't sell it as a male and a female, okay, because it means that then it means they've got some pretty big mink. Also, their quality is probably good. So they're pretty, a good breeder. They know what they're doing. Once that mink gets sized, it turns into a European mink.
Oh, I got you.
If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it.
It just, they just call it a European mink, even though it's raised in China.
Okay.
And I would say at this point, the majority of them, are considered European mink.
Okay.
Well, I wish there was better news.
Yeah, you want me to run down some of the? Yeah, I mean, maybe I should start with, I would say otters are, and it is a Chinese item, but it's, we sold a record amount of otters last year at our company, and we are, the market is, relatively good on otters, very similar to last year, if not a little higher. Beaver, I mean, I know the market was not great last year, but, once you pull the caster out, we're paying the same basically as last year. For the beaver, and so that's kind of a decent item. We handled a record amount of beavers last year too, and I know we're not running routes right now. We will be, later, but we're certainly open to any quantities of green beaver, and dry beaver obviously as well. But so those two items, one is up a little bit, one is very stable to last year. Beaver is mostly a European and domestic item for us, so it's unaffected by China. I would say that the raccoon, red fox, gray fox are sort of all in the same boat in that there is kind of an excess of those skins. And I would say something that's interesting that's maybe in those items, and in particular raccoon, is we can no longer dress those items in China. And the Chinese dressing was actually, really good, and they knew how to handle those skins. And we now have to dress them in Southeast Asia and then bring them in dressed because of COVID. And the cost is a little higher. And then we have one more leg of shipping from Southeast Asia to China.
Mm-hmm.
So the cost has gone up on those items as far as what we have to spend, and the dressing quality is not as good as China. So we will definitely see, even if none of this had happened, there are going to be a lot more skins that are just going to have a no value or even a negative value. So in other words, if you're from, say central Indiana, and, you sold your skins to me last year, and, I don't know what they would have averaged, but, maybe I paid $1 on some dry coon, that were, not very good. And, that is a raccoon that is not going to find a bid this year. That is a raccoon that if I send that to China and you gave it to me, and you gave it to me dry, that I would definitely lose money on. Okay, if you gave it to me.
Yeah.
So an extra large, poor color, slight damage, a double that's really poor color, late caught or early caught, anything blue is going to have relatively no value. And it's really it really has exposed itself because, we buy across the entire US, and, we have seen maybe not an increase, but we've seen trapping remain a little steadier in the more temperate regions. And a lot of those regions don't produce the nicest raccoon, red fox,
Right.
And they do it because, hey, it's a sport, it's fun. I don't have to, wear, 6 pairs of long underwear and a parka to go out and trap. I can kind of do it and enjoy myself. So the professional that went out in northern Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, that produced big numbers of really good quality prime coon, they just aren't producing. So, our percentages of poorer and poorer raccoon become bigger and bigger because the guys that are still going as these prices have gone down have been from these regions. So it's going to be a difficult market where you have a poorer raccoon.
Interesting. So
yeah.
What recommendations then do you have to the trapper guy in terms of what he should be keeping?
Okay, I'll tell you what. As you go into those poorer sections, you usually have a smaller and smaller window, that a coon is really good.
Right.
And you go to some of the best sections, and you have darn near a month and a half where a raccoon is kind of white leather and really is not marked up. But you really, if you're in Indiana, you got to be about done trapping coon. Because you're already starting to get coon marked up. I mean, we're only the 15th of November. Maybe another week, maybe Thanksgiving or whatever. You got to think about that's it, because they start to get marked up, and there's going to be very little value there. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's you put dressing into the size that that type of coon is, and the amount of off colors, the amount of slight damages, it gets to be extremely difficult.
Yeah. I guess explain what you mean by marked up, guy.
Well, a late caught coon, like if you scrape your coon, you start to see like some brown spots, okay, or some dark spots. Sometimes the belly goes first, you get a stripe down the belly, and then you start to see these sort of dark spots. Well, any of those dark spots are kind of bruises or whatever, where the animal's been itching or scratching, or there's some type of imperfection. Well, then as it goes on, as the season wears on, they just become bigger, and sometimes you can have a raccoon that is just basically one big brown spot, and that's what we call by marked up. I mean, you get a beautiful North Iowa raccoon caught the 25th of November, and you could have a guy catch 100 coon if he knows what he's doing, and you would find 2 of them that have been, maybe a couple old boars or something. If it got cold early, maybe are marked up, but you just have this beautiful set of coon. But those guys just aren't trapping, and you get a set of full season Central Indiana raccoon, and some guy catches 100 coon and puts them up. If he's not careful, he could have 80% of them are what we would call marked up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's nothing they're doing wrong. It's just, they have a very short window where that raccoon is good.
Right. Right.
What about coyotes?
Okay. Coyote market is, I don't see a lot of value, east of maybe Mason City, Iowa, middle of Iowa. I just don't. We've lost Canada goose, and it's a very, very difficult. If I bought that type of coyote, I do not know who I would sell it to. I just don't know who would buy it.
So do you see that changing in terms of someone coming in, some other manufacturers, someone coming in, or others, more than one, obviously, coming in trying to take the place of where Canada Goose left off?
Well, since Canada Goose has quit, we've had several others that have, jumped on the bandwagon and quit.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I don't. And, as far as China goes, they won't make the sort of copycat coats, if they don't have the real ones. And then, on top of that, a blue fox is, very, very cheap. And, you get 12 strips out of that, and a decent coyote, you get 5,
Mm-hmm.
they'll go with the cheaper, easier to use item. And, 25 years ago, I used to go to China and try and sell coyotes, and they'd laugh at me.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then the Canada Goose thing happened, and, everything, improved a lot, obviously. But, without them, I see it as the worst item. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't know. Besides, like, novelty domestically, I don't see how that item is gonna, some of the Westerns, if some of the orders pick up, late season in the United States, I can see that coyote having some value. But the Midwest Eastern type is going to be a difficult situation.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a downer, guy.
That is a downer, and
The truth hurts sometimes.
I'll tell you, I can't. I am a little bit of a pessimist in the fur business. So you can take what I say with a grain of salt, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, in the last 12 years, there's nobody prognosticated the market as well as I have.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. But I do not see a way out of this on the coyote unless something really, really changes.
Mm-hmm.
Muskrats, they're a total Chinese item, but they're not as bad a situation as, say, red fox or raccoon, because there's very few around. And Kazakhstan and Russia, they can't get their muskrats into China like we can, and so it's going to take a hit, especially early because of these ranch meat getting so much cheaper. But I think it's not going to be an issue where some skins won't have a bid. I mean, your muskrats will be should be saleable, and let's see what happens the next month and a half as far as Chinese sales, because there's not like there's a ton of them piled up over there. Questions on that?
No, I mean that's the whole thing here is just we just don't have muskrats anymore. So
right.
Yeah. I mean, you pretty much nailed. I mean, that there's just not the muskrats out there like there once was.
It's such because when I first started, that's how every kid everywhere got started trapping muskrats. You could not. I mean, even I could trap muskrats. You threw a trap in, and even if you didn't place it right, you caught a rat the next day.
Right.
And so it does. It is gonna. It'll probably be slightly, fairly resilient as far as price goes this year. I mean, not like last year, but it's just an item that there's so many areas of the U.S. that just are, devoid of them. I mean, you even go to Iowa, it used to be one of our biggest states to buy muskrats. And, that's a state that's becoming devoid of muskrats. And Illinois too. We used to be 85% wetlands in Illinois, and we don't hardly have a muskrat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same here in Indiana. The places we caught them when I was a kid, or 30 years ago, there's just not there. So it's
crazy. Yeah. Cat market, it's not a Chinese item. It should be, as good as last year. Obviously, the better colors are certainly the stuff we sold first this year. The real poor qualities, it'll be tough for them to find a bit this year.
So,
but the better.
Where do they primarily go?
Well, they go to Italy. They go to some to Russia. I mean, really to Greece, to Russia, but to Europe they go.
Okay. And that's still a high fashion, high end market.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The Russians, how do they play into all of this in terms of
I've heard some people have called me up and it's kind of strange. And they say, oh, I heard the Russians are going to, buy raccoon this year. And, they're coming in to buy raccoon. And I'm like, I mean, that's news to me. And the thing that most people don't realize is the Russians, although they left the market for the traditional Greek manufactured full length raccoon coat, that just does not exist today. That is not sold. Nobody buys a raccoon coat in Russia anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe they sell a few, but basically that is an out of style, fashions have passed that by a long ways. The Russians have never really left the market. I mean, we still sell, to customers in China that are making, quantities for the Russians. I mean, it was a good year in China last year as far as retail. It was a bad year in Russia because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And this year, maybe we could even see a little improvement in what the Chinese, as far as garments, are selling, to the Russians. So, I mean, there could be a little improvement because, COVID, although still fairly bad in Russia, maybe they'll have a little, it's kind of run through the country a bit like it has here. And, maybe they'll have a little bit of a decent, retail season. But, we won't see that in some, they maybe help takes off some of the excess. They do buy some, raccoon trimmed garments, but a lot of cheap, type garments they buy. Mm-hmm. So we sound like we're going to see some, Russians come back, to start manufacturing. They'll buy a little more maybe in China. Any other consuming countries of any note at all in terms of quantity, or is that pretty much it? Yeah, I would say no. I mean, I am, sort of cautiously optimistic for the future that, we had a climate, meeting, a week ago, and, all the world's leaders go there. And of course they talk about electric cars and, CO2 for, a week and a half or whatever it was. And they don't mention the fact that, everybody's wearing polyester clothes around, and it's a, right. Environmental, it's really an environmental cesspool, the way, what we wear for clothes and all the petrochemicals that go into them and how bad it is for the environment. But, I think that, and I think it's going to happen faster than anybody realizes. One country is going to jump on the bandwagon. I mean, you have to realize that in Europe, there's countries saying, hey, we're not going to have, internal combustion engines in 10 years. And there's countries that are saying, you can't use a plastic, toothpick or a plastic, chopsticks in Europe. Mm-hmm. Okay. What kind of a stretch is it for one of those countries to come out and say, hey, and some of them have had some anti-fur legislation, but for somebody to come out and say, hey, we're not going to have any polyester clothes anymore. We're not going to have any nylon clothes anymore. And then everybody starts to scratch their head and say, wow, what's the alternative? And mm-hmm. Of course, cotton would be the number one, but, obviously wool. I'm in the wool business. I don't know if you guys know what Allbirds is. It's a shoe that's made out of all wool and eucalyptus for rubber. They had an IPO 2 weeks ago, and, they doubled the price. I mean, these sustainable clothing, trends are going to happen. They're going to happen so fast, and we can just only hope that at some point somebody says, wow, fur, is the ultimate sustainable fashion. It's been around for 10,000 years. Sure. And, that is, the hope that can save the fur business. And, I don't think that's stretch. I really don't. Well, that's a good positive note. What about, and this was an issue, and I'm sure you got a handle on this. What about the environmental aspects of tanning those skins? Yeah, most people that we work with, their tanning has, changed drastically. I mean, if you tan in China, you can't just dump water, like, dump chemicals like you used to. Mm-hmm. People are they've gotten rid of the heavy metals. It's, they use, there's so many things in tanning today that are so much more environmentally friendly. And the friendlier you get, the better product it is, because on the tail end, it disappears in the landfill much faster.
Sure.
You know, the less heavy metals you use in tanning, which are not hardly used anymore at all, you know, the faster that thing decomposes once it's, you know, once it is discarded.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, the tanning thing is, you know, I think, you know, and the technology is evolving so quickly, to tan this stuff without any harsh chemicals that, yeah, I don't think that's really an issue.
So basically, full circle, fur is very green, you know, obviously very sustainable. So yeah, the message just needs to get out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you take like like a muskrat, you know, I mean, you know, how long does a muskrat live? You know, 2 years, you know, or most of them live for a year. You know, what are you really doing, you know, by going out and harvesting it, you know, 3 months, you know, before, you know, it's going to die of natural causes? You know, obviously that turnover has to be, you know, vast in some of these big marshes, or, you know, even a raccoon. You know, how many 5-year-old raccoon do you catch? We don't. You know, most of them are you know, 2 years, maybe a few 3s. And you know, you're just harvesting, you know, what's going to naturally die. Okay, a beaver does have a longer lifespan, but the beaver story is the best story of all, because, you know, it's chopping down trees. So every beaver you catch, you know, you can be responsible for the sequestration of carbon. You know, yeah, that's you know, to get rid of beavers. Yeah, that's the best item to get rid of if you want to be environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's we'll leave that at a fairly positive note there then. So
Okay, yeah, I mean,
anything
I'd
else?
love to see it. Yeah, you know, we should be posting our routes, you know, sometime in December. We're gonna see how this retail season, you know, plays out, because the reason we put them off is because, you know, the start of the retail season, you know, something was happening that's never happened before in the fur business. It just wasn't happening in China.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, let's see how it plays out. I'm hoping for a 50% season. I would be happy with that. And you know, we wouldn't have, you know, some big catastrophic fall. But you know, if we do lose the season there, it's going to be very difficult for everyone in this industry.
Mm-hmm. But it would still, what hopefully in that worst case scenario, it would start to rectify itself for the following year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, last year, you know, what happened during COVID is, you know, in June, you know, mink did go down to just absolutely ridiculous prices. I mean, they were so cheap. You know, you could buy a mink for a female for $8 in Copenhagen or Helsinki. And so it, you know, it did sort of rectify itself kind of quickly, you know, last fall, in that, you know, they were selling coats, you know, very, very cheaply. They were just, you know, kind of liquidating, and all of a sudden, and then on top of that, you know, you had those mink killed off in Denmark, and so you just had a double whammy. You know, Chinese economy's open, they kill off 17 million mink, and everybody's got their coats discounted to the price of ridiculousness. Wow, we're going to sell a lot of coats. So it really rectified itself fast, and you know, that's what we would hope would happen in this situation as well.
Sure.
Well, we appreciate the update.
You got anything else you want to add, Guy?
You know, not really. Thanks for having me, and you know, have a safe and successful season.
Yeah, exactly. And it is still important that there's some wild fur production. Obviously, if it cuts off, then there's a gap in the supply chain. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of raccoon in the supply chain. I mean, there's not a lot of muskrats. There's not a lot of, you know, some of the other items. You know, I wish everybody would trap beavers and otters this year. You know, I guess you know, it would help. I mean, but you know, there is enough raccoon that it's not like, you know, they're going to be like, hey, we can't buy quantities. You know, we're gonna discontinue the item. But that is an issue typically in China, because if you don't have quantities, they won't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Hey, thanks a lot. Okay.
Appreciate it, Guy. Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.